Good day, folks. Everything new under the sun. You're looking at my timeline of the return of the Lord. You know that I believe the year 6000 is in or around the year 2028, and I think that's when the wrath of God falls. I think the 7 year period is split between two periods, the tribulation and the great tribulation. So the first 3.5 years is the tribulation, and I think we're going to be around for that. I think that involves and includes the force and the apocalypse from Revelation chapter 6, but the lean into the four horsemen of the apocalypse starts prior to the 7 year period, because World War III, economic collapse, great worldwide famine, that doesn't come all of a sudden. That starts, and that's known in the Bible as the beginning of sorrows, and so it kind of starts from somewhere and comes to a climax really in that first 3.5 years, where the four horsemen of the apocalypse are completely riding from Revelation chapter 6. Now, I want to detail the difference between the tribulation and the great tribulation. I'm going to go ahead and close this. And you're looking at Matthew chapter 24. So Matthew chapter 24 speaks about the sign of the times and the end of the age. And, of course, the disciples are asking Jesus, tell us when these things will be, and when will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age. And it says, and this is about the end of the age, the last days, specifically about the tribulation. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation, and they will kill you. Now, remember, I make the distinction between tribulation and great tribulation. In this section, it refers to tribulation. It says, you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake, and that's the same to go with Israel as well. Are they hated by all the nations? They absolutely are. And then many will be offended and betray one another and will hate one another. Then many false prophets will rise up and deceive many, and lawlessness will abound. Do you know of lawlessness in a country near you? Is there lawfare going on in the court system? Is everybody just doing whatever they want with the law, rewriting the Constitution, reinterpreting it whatever way they want? Yeah, there's absolute lawlessness. And even Puerto Rico, Mexico, there's lawlessness there, and many other countries. There just is no law. But he who endures the end shall be saved, and the gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all nations. Now, it says, and then the end will come. So all this is happening before the end. Now, this section here speaks about then the great tribulation. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, so spoken of by Daniel the prophet, when is the abomination of desolation? Well, that's at the midpoint of the 7-year period. The Antichrist rules and reigns for a period of 3.5 years, and then he sits on the throne in the rebuilt third temple after he allows sacrifices to start again, and declares himself to be God. And that's the red line for God. When he desecrates the temple and sits on the throne, that's the abomination of desolation. And so that's at the midpoint. So the Great Tribulation doesn't come until the midpoint of the 7-year period. For then there will be great tribulation, it says in verse 21, such as not been seen since the beginning of the world. Now, the tribulation and the Great Tribulation is separated by what? What is the difference? Well, when the Great Tribulation starts, I believe Revelation 6 gives us the detail. But basically the sun and the moon get darkened. So here we have the verse down here, verse 29, speaking about the coming of the Son of Man. Immediately after the tribulation, not after the Great Tribulation, but immediately after the tribulation, it says. I'm just reading the words of the King James Bible. I think this is even NKJV, yeah. And the King James Version says the exact same thing. You can go check it out, make sure I'm right. But it says, immediately after the tribulation, not great tribulation, but tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light. Now that's a key indicator, because it speaks of something about the sun and the moon in Revelation chapter 6, doesn't it? Let's have a look. So this is Revelation chapter 6, the Bible Hub. These are the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Let's go to the KJV here. So we have the four horsemen of the apocalypse, the first, second, third, and fourth seal: famine, war, economic collapse. And we get down to the sixth seal. So I believe we go through the four horsemen of the apocalypse up here. And it started already. Even many have suggested that COVID could be part of the birth pains, and certainly the first of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. So the first horse is a white horse, and he who sat on him had a bow, and a crown corona was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. Did he conquer everybody? No, but he went forth conquering across the whole world. And remember, these end of days things, these are going to be worldwide phenomenon. I think we're around for that. Now, getting back to where the sun and the moon come into play, because that seems to be the distinction between the tribulation and the great tribulation. Well, you have to go down to sixth seal here. It says, and lo, and I beheld, rather, when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake. The sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. So this is the sixth seal. Remember, if these open in somewhat chronological order, they may overlap, but I believe they will start in chronological order of some sort. That means the sun and the moon event come after the four horsemen of the apocalypse, right? So again, you have this immediately after the tribulation of those days. The sun be darkened and the moon will not give its light. This is after the tribulation, but before the great tribulation. And so I believe we're going to be here for the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and many believe they are indeed riding. So with that, let's take a look at the news of the day, and I hope that explains it for my newer viewers who are just coming to this channel. But that's where I sit theologically, eschatologically, as it relates to end time events. And there's a lot of things happening which suggest that we are headed to basically the precursor of not the first seal, but the precursor of the Great War, the second seal, and that's really going to be what comes after the war, I think, or after a part of this is the Antichrist figure, where he stands up and says, "Look, you got to the precipice of World War III. I can save you all. I can feed you all. I can correct the world economic system. Here, take the mark of the beast, and you will be part of this new system. Without it, you can't buy or sell. And if anybody barters with you, we will put them in jail or behead them." And people will accept them because they have to, because they don't know anything else, because they're absolutely desperate at that point in time. So I've said that before. And so I believe we're at that point in time in the year 2024, war in 2024, where the world is coming to, a peak of certainly prosperity. I think we're on the downhill slide of that. Our debt is out of control. We're heading to war to distract people from the fact that our debt is out of control and our economies are about to crash. And when World War III does start, it's going to destroy the supply lines. And even now, there's sanctions. U.S. has sanctioned China. China is now reaching back and sanctioning the U.S. And when China, the world manufacturing hub of pretty much all our goods and products, at least significant portions of those goods and products, when they sanction us, that means our supply chain is going to be really, really pinched, folks. We don't have manufacturing in the West, not a lot of it, that's for sure, and we would have to ramp up a significant amount before any of the pain lessens. So when we go to World War III and these countries cut us off, folks, that's when really the supply chain, the food stops, and it's Depression 2.0 and 10 times worse than the Great Depression. It will be the greatest depression, that's for sure. Let's look at a few events that's leading us to World War III, and I believe the precursors, the things that lead us to really the ability for the Antichrist to stand up and say, look, I can bring us out of this craziness. I can bring us out of this World War III. You just need to accept me as the leader of the world. So this is Zero Hedge. The U.S. is now openly allowing Ukraine to use its arms to strike inside Russia. Why is this a big deal? Well, this means that Russia is going to get sick and tired of this, and they're going to have to pull the nuclear option. They know that Ukraine is using U.S. weapons. They know Ukraine even has NATO troops on the ground providing strategy, even maybe aiming. Certainly targeting information is coming from, American intelligence, American military, NATO military, whatever it may be. Russia knows this. Russia's just playing a game of chess. They're waiting for the right time to strike, I believe. One of the worst kept secrets of NATO-Russian proxy war in Ukraine is that the U.S. allows its client state to use American arms for striking inside Russia, despite officially prohibiting it from doing so. Remember, the U.S. doesn't want Russia to have an excuse to go to war against NATO and use all its nuclear weapons. But at the same time, they say Ukraine can do whatever they want with their ammunition. But this is, Now that this is publicly available, we knew it was happening for a long time, but now it's publicly available. It's basically a slap in the face for Russia. Russia has to save face, and they're going to come back hard against NATO. And have you heard of um, situation with spies? Have you heard of weird fires in big, massive poultry farms and pipeline explosions? Random mysterious events and trains derailing, cyber attacks happening all over the country, and it hasn't started yet. When Russia really wants to go to war against us, look out! The cyber attacks will bring us to our knees. They won't just be hello, I'm here. they're gonna absolutely bring our technology to its knees. They're gonna cut our communications. They're gonna cut our power. It will be every man for himself. Basically, would be Mad Max, and you need to be prepared for that mentally, physically, even. That it's going to be a hard time to prepare for, but that's what's coming down the pipe, and that's what gets people into such a desperate situation when they have nothing else, when they've lost everything. That's when they will accept the Antichrist figure. They won't know that he's the Antichrist unless they read their Bible. You and I will know. But they will accept him. Most of the world will accept him, just like most of the world accepted what happened during the pandemic, right? U.S. Special Forces kills undocumented Chechen outside home in possible spy incident. So, these Chechens, they had no personal identification. They were working for a power company. They were spying on a U.S. Special Forces colonel in Fort Liberty, formerly Fort Bragg in North Carolina. They were taking photos with a telephoto lens, and they took him out. Apparently, this guy took out one of these guys, deleted him. And if they cut these guys, how many other spies are taking photos, sending them back from their phone, emailing, Russian, Chinese intelligence, whatever it may be, or maybe they're not going direct to Russia. Maybe they're going back to, Chechen leaders and then relayed to Russia or whomever it's going to. But they're spies. They're spies in our country. It sounds like the Cold War, doesn't it? But this is going on, and it's getting to a point where there's so many of them now. We're actually hearing some of the ones that get into the mainstream media. But it's all over. This is the state of the world, folks. We have spies that are watching us now. This is the U.S. intelligence agencies trying to control social media. Now, what do they do during World War III? What do they do during the pandemic? They tried to control and influence the population through social media, through mainstream media. They tried to tell a narrative. Remember, they don't want the public to panic. It's the government's purpose to keep the public safe. And the best way to keep the public safe, they believe, is to keep us in the dark, to tell us a specific narrative so that they can control the emotions and what people do and say and spend their money on and spend their time on. And so they want to tell this story. And, this makes sense from an intelligence point of view. If these, big government and military organizations were, and police even, remember the RCMP in Canada, actually it was Canadian military, they were doing a psyop on Canadians, and they were tracking cell phones to see who was complying with the lockdown using your cell phone data, folks. So if you were carrying your cell phone, they would know if you were off your premises or not. And, you'd be kidding yourself if you didn't think that the U.S. military wasn't doing that, the intelligence agencies, etc. CIA is strictly prohibited from spying on or running clandestine operations against American citizens. That's the law, but they get around it. They tell Britain to spy on the U.S. and then pass the U.S. all the information. And in exchange, the U.S. spies on all the British citizens and passes the information to Britain. So the militaries come out and say, or the intelligence agencies, and they say, well, it wasn't us, directly. But there's a new bombshell Twitter files report that reveals a member of board of trustees of In-Q-Tel, the CIA's mission-driving venture capital firm, along with former intelligence community CIA analysts, were involved in a massive effort in 2021-2022 to take over Twitter's content management system. Why? To control the narrative, to control what you think and say and do, to make you believe there's nobody else out there who has alternate opinions than you, right? Or to at least limit the reach of your opinions to someone else who might be looking or searching for it. And that's a way to control the public, to create that narrative, to push it, to make people believe it. And that's how you control people, folks. This is what Hitler did in Nazi Germany. This is all the same stuff. This is known back in the day as propaganda, folks, and your government is doing it to you. This should not be a surprise, but to many it is. And when the Antichrist comes, there's going to be massive propaganda. It's going to be worldwide controlled, whether it's through the WHO, World Health Organization, or the WEF, or whatever it is. I'm sure they'll all be coordinating because there'll be the massive emergency will be, effectively the precipice of World War III and nuclear annihilation. That's what's going to lead these people to grab power, just like they did in the pandemic. In the name of public health and safety, they're going to grab power. Martial law will be introduced, capital controls, and your ability to move will be reduced in the name of public health and safety because they don't want to give too much information to the enemy countries, etc. Right? And this same thing happened in World War II. It's just that now, the government officials and military are a bit more nefarious, a bit more secret, and they have a lot more power than they did then, although they had a lot then too. This is War News 247. So with one of the missiles that U.S. said, Ukraine could shoot into Russia, well, they hit one of Russia's early warning systems in Moscow. And this is an early warning system for ballistic missiles, so that Russia knows if there's incoming, nuclear-tipped warheads, that they would be able to respond. And apparently this had nothing to do with, it doesn't help Ukraine any, but it does help NATO. Ukraine has hit the radar of Russia's nuclear early warning system and combat system in development that automatically sets off developments as Russia's strategic weapons are expected to be put on high alert. But mostly, the strike justifies the use of nuclear weapons according to the country's doctrine. So, if their deterrence and their radar, their eyes on the ground of incoming weapons is removed or limited, that means they have to strike with nuclear weapons first, because if they don't, they won't see when nuclear weapons are coming at them enough to respond. So you can understand why this is a big deal. It says, although Russia does not have a DEFCON unit of measure, this strike and the ongoing tactical nuclear weapons exercise, which I spoke about in one of the prior videos, are nonetheless DEFCON level 2, it says. It is the first time Ukraine has attacked a target of Russia's nuclear early warning system, which is useless for Ukraine, it says. Look at that, as the radar detects incoming ICBMs. Ukraine's not using ICBMs. I don't know if they have them, but they're not using them. So to attack that radar station, that sounds more like a win for NATO, for the United States, for the bigger war that is coming between NATO and Russia. And so this is a softening the ground for World War III, which is beyond this proxy war. So that's an interesting bit of information. The Voronezh DM is an advanced over-the-horizon OTH ultra-high-frequency UHF early warning radar system for intercontinental ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. It has a range of 6,000 kilometers. The particular radar that was shot down was monitoring the airspace as far as Poland. Now, that's interesting because we know that Poland is actually asking for NATO nuclear weapons. So, if it would be in NATO's interest to first take out the early warning systems that could see as far as Poland, right? Ground-based at least, or satellites, but to take them out, because if the NATO moves nukes there, then Russia will have a lot less verifiable information that there may be an incoming ICBM. So that's very, very interesting, and it's not of use to Ukraine proper. This destruction of this radar system, but it is quite advantageous and a coincidence, I guess, and advantageous to NATO and United States for the greater war that is coming, that they are softening the ground for in Russia. This is a big deal. This means that really, at any time now, technically, according to the country's doctrine, they know they can't beat NATO with conventional weapons. They've always been planning for a nuclear war if they got to that point with NATO. And now it's really, who's going to push the button first. And Russia's been holding off. Russia's been very patient. Russia says some want nuclear war. They're referring to NATO there. It looks as if NATO wants nuclear war. It looks as if NATO wants a conflict. NATO's not backing down. Have you heard that they're, if they're talking about peace? They're not. They're not talking about peace. They're not inviting Putin to the table to come up with some land for peace agreement. Does land for peace sound familiar? Well, that's what the world is has been trying to push on Israel for 70 years, haven't they? But is the world trying to push that on Russia, NATO? Absolutely not, because NATO wants war and they have no interest in coming to peace, going to peace. There was even I think it was a European politician, it might have been an American politician, who basically said, now is the time to split up Russia into member states, into a whole bunch of smaller states, basically, so that they have less power. So, Russia is definitely threatens. Russia's on the defensive, and they will have to go on the offensive because that's how their nuclear doctrine exists and is winnable, at least for them as they have designed it. They have to strike with nuclear weapons, and that's the only way they've ever planned and strategically planned to take out and beat NATO. So now it's every man for himself. It's an existential threat to Russia proper if they let this continue on. So like I say, yeah, DEFCON 2, DEFCON 1, whatever you want to call it, the nukes could fly at any time, folks, and that's not even an overstatement of what the current situation is. Do you know Lord Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior? I hope you do. You have to have your heart right and your mind in order and your house in order. When these things come, they will be very hard. The four horsemen of the apocalypse spoken of in the first four seals, I believe, I think there's interesting evidence that the first seal has broken already with the pandemic. As it comes to birth pains, there's periods of high pain and then a lull in that. The birth pains, they come and they go, right? They increase in frequency and intensity, but when you have a high, you also have a low where there's no pain. So could we now be in between those spikes of pain, if you will, in childbirth? And these are certainly the beginnings of sorrows, and I think we're going to live through a lot of this, and even the revealing of the Antichrist, because it shouldn't be, as soon as the Antichrist comes on the scene, I think it's mentioned that he's revealed to the world, but Christians should, if he's in the mainstream media or on the planet, Christians should recognize him for who he is, but the whole world won't. They'll just think the Christians who are saying it are just tin hat kooks speaking about it. So anyways, I think that's more related to the world and not the Christians being revealed to. So I'll leave there, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you're ready. Be prepared. I'll see you in the next video.